Hey guys, it's Thursday, and we love our Thursdays because we get a chance to hang out with our good friend WagerTalk.com's the legendary handicapper himself, Ralph Michaels. He joins us via the Miami Acura hotline. And Ralph, thanks once again for stopping by, hanging out with us here today.
Oh, always a pleasure. Love chatting with you, Joe, and appreciate those retweets and getting the information out there. I like setting myself apart at Twitter, and a lot of people give their opinions. Well, I give 99% information and maybe 1% opinion, so always do appreciate that.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, coming up, we've got a great opportunity for you with Ralph. If you follow him at WagerTalk.com, you got a great opportunity to get one of his 5% bets at a cost that is just unbelievable. We'll give you that information coming up here in just a few minutes. But, Ralph, let's dive into tonight, Thursday Night Football. What the hell? The college football gods, like, they dropped 5 games in our lap here tonight. It's crazy what we've got going on, including the Miami Dolphin game in the NFL. But let's start Baylor and West Virginia tonight. And, you know, to me, the Bears have been a team that's just kind of been an afterthought in the betting market coming off a 1-11 season a year ago. It's like a lot of people have written this program off, and we've got West Virginia coming off a loss last week, and we've got Baylor at a 2-touchdown getting 14 points in this game. What do you see in this game tonight here between Baylor and West Virginia?
You know what? I've been a fan of Baylor's this year, and really what you're seeing is Matt Rule, who had to take a program that was decimated from the Bryles area, had a pass offense attack. Coming from Temple, we know Matt Rule was a run-first type head coach. And what has he done this year? His only losses are to 3 very good teams. Duke, which he outgained, at Oklahoma, which he lost by 33 points. But the reason they lost that game was turnovers. Against Oklahoma, they actually had a 33-22 first down edge. And then at Texas last week, wasn't a bad loss either, only getting outgained by 61 points. The problem is the situation clearly favors West Virginia. Baylor off the physical Texas game, playing a second straight game on the road. West Virginia off that embarrassing loss at Iowa State, only scoring 14 points and having 9 first downs. I think Will Grier gets it back into action tonight. And West Virginia at night, I mean, you have to watch out. They'll be drinking already. Mm-hmm. They'll be partying. There'll be couches burning outside, Mountaineer Field in Morgantown. It'll be a hell of a scene tonight. They're very excited about this primetime game. So while I like Baylor, I would fade them this week because of the situation.
One of the other games, too, Ralph, tonight, not as talked about, but certainly, to me, very intriguing when you look at Appalachian State and Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern got back to the triple option roots finally this summer. It certainly has paid off. They're 6-1 straight up and against the spread. But Appalachian State, I believe they're ranked now in the top 25. I think that's the first time in school history. And they're laying 10 points tonight against a pretty damn good Georgia Southern team here, Ralph. What do you think about Appalachian State?
Well, for those that don't follow college football too closely, these two were perhaps the fiercest rivals in all of college football. I'm talking about Ohio State, Michigan. I'm talking about Army, Navy. They were both in the SoCon Conference, and between them, they each won 4 or more national titles in a 12-year period. So they were, again, fierce rivals. That's carried over, but not quite as much. I actually picked Georgia Southern as my long shot to win the Sun Belt preseason, made a couple nice future wagers on them. So to me, I have Georgia Southern in this game, and I like them. But this App State team is legit. They're plus 163 yards per game. They're holding opponents to 29.5 yards per carry. Now, also, one thing you like, when you're facing the option, this team is used to facing the option. They faced it in the past, while, again, Georgia Southern is back to the option in the second year of Chad Lundford's tenure here. It's still a situation that they like. I think the number is right. This is one of those rare games where I'm rooting with my heart for Georgia Southern, but when I made my number on the game, It's exactly where Vegas has it. So for that situation, it's just one of those games where it's better to pass than to force a play.
Amen. Ralph Michaels joining us, wagertalk.com. That is where you can find him. Football tonight, Thursday night. And one of the other games, too, on the sled tonight, Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech. And boy, have the Hokies fallen, haven't they? They were, I believe, a 3-point home favorite over Georgia Tech. I believe that's where we've got the number right now. But I don't know. Bud Foster's got a great mind. He's a great defensive coordinator. But, man, I don't trust the offense, and we got the triple option coming into play. Does he have the athletes to be able to compete against that? What do you like in Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech?
Well, Bud Foster, again, is used to seeing this team. Last year, they allowed 401 yards per carry, 261 yards rushing, and they lost 28-22 at Tech. The one thing, though, I like about this game is I have this game closer to pick, and this is what I call an inside-out game. And the reason is this. West Virginia was off a win last week at North Carolina, 22-19. Georgia Tech was off a loss against Duke at home. Therefore, people think, Virginia Tech, what have you done for me lately? But the inside-out theory comes with a deeper dive into the stats. Virginia Tech got outgained by 147 yards against North Carolina, had to struggle, trailed most of the game, and needed to come from behind win. On the opposite side, Georgia Tech outgained Duke by 50 yards per game and just had some things occur where they lost the game. So by looking at the yards per game last week instead of the score, I think you would have a different result with the line. I therefore think there is value with Georgia Tech.
And we've talked about this too in the past. Ralph Michaels joining us, wagertalk.com. My alma mater, Oklahoma State, is taking on, and I know you love Texas. I know you follow Texas a lot, Tom Herman, and we've got a very interesting Big 12 matchup this weekend. Texas taking on Oklahoma State. Texas laying points, 3.5. Can we trust Texas? Are they for real?
Well, you know what? They're for real when they are a dog. When they are a favorite, they are not for real. It's really been true for the last 4 years under Herman. As an underdog, he has had his teams ready and prepped them, and they've played very well. But when you look at him as a favorite, Tom Herman is only 4-14 against the spread as a favorite. Now, in this game, it's a situation that I like to fade, and it's simply this. I like looking at what the lines were last year and the previous couple years. It shows you how a team has dominated a team or when Vegas compared one team to another. Last year, Oklahoma State was a 7-point away favorite at Texas and won that game. Now they're coming at home. Yes, they lost so much with Mason Rudolph and James Washington and Justice Hill. And, I mean, they lost as much as anyone as far as skill players are involved. But that game last year, they won 13-10 in the defensive battle. Now you have Texas saying, okay, we're back, we're believing. Well, you know, you look at they struggled against Baylor last week. They were a much bigger favorite. They only won by 3. In the dog roll against Oklahoma, of course, they pulled the upset. At Kansas State, they only won that game by 5. So I think it's a situation where certain teams perform better as a dog, like Texas, but going on the road and having that big of a line swing from last year's 7, that means if OSU was laying 7 on the road last year, if they were comparable teams, they were being laying 13 this year. Well, instead they're getting 3 points. Yes, they're down, but I think this is a situation where there's value on Oklahoma State because, again, it's the what have you done for me lately on Texas with a couple big wins, while OSU lost back-to-back games to Iowa State and Kansas State.
This is the perfect time as Ralph Michaels joins us, wagertalk.com. Now, for those of you who don't know, Ralph Michaels has been killing it in college football this year, and he actually has an opportunity for you guys to profit from his knowledge and what he's been doing. And right now, if you head to wagertalk.com, Ralph, explain about your 5% pick and what you got going with the SEC.
Well, you know, as you said, college football on the season, 67%. Those are numbers that I would normally say to customers, don't believe a tout if they're going to tell you they're 67%. And I am certainly not a tout, and I rarely talk about records, but again, these are records that you could follow at Wager Talk. I'm on a 15-1 run the last 2 weeks in college football. And again, that doesn't mean I'll be going 15-1 the next 16 plays. It just means you have a good feel of the college landscape. You're picking plays well. Well, I have a top-rated 5% play. This is only my third of the football season, and it's game of the month worthy. That play sells for $30 at Wager Talk. If you go to wagertalk.com, and it'll either be right on the front page or go to the Cal Sports page, you'll see that play is $30. Go ahead and add it to your cart, fill out the information, use the code Miami2 as a coupon code. That $30 play will cost you $2. $2. You're saving $28 off the play. Other people are paying $30. My way of saying thank you to Joe for having me on the show, and my way of saying thank you for listening to the show. Miami2 is the code. Get my 5% top-rated play for $2.
Yeah, they don't come around often, but when they do, it is certainly going to be the best $2 that you've ever spent. So make sure that you guys click in the link below. You'll have all the opportunity there. Head over to wagertalk.com. Cash in. Take advantage of Ralph Michaels' genius here as he joins us via the Miami Acura hotline. One of the other games here in South Florida College that a lot of Florida State fans in this community here, Ralph, taking on a Clemson team that just demolished North Carolina State last week, and they're laying some points here. It opened up at 14, but I think we're all the way up to about 17 now, Clemson. And Florida State, listen, they've got athletes. It hasn't gone their way so far this year, but Francois seems to be coming around. Do you think Florida State can hang with Clemson, or is Clemson just going to run over Florida State on their way to the ACC championship?
Well, let's put this game in perspective. Florida State, since 1980, this is only the second time they've been an underdog of 16 points or more. The other time was in 2008 when they played a #1 Florida Gators team. So again, this is shown that two things: how good Clemson has become and how far Florida State has fallen. Now, yes, they got to win against Wake Forest. Yes, they got to win against Louisville. Yes, they got to win against Northern Illinois. And yes, they got to win against Samford. But there's not one of those 4 wins that's going to scare any foe into saying this team has a chance to beat me. You know, Clemson, full disclosure, while I didn't use NC State last week, I actually thought NC State would keep it much closer than they did against Clemson. What did Clemson do? Jump out to a big 24-0 halftime lead, dominated that game 41-7. I think that helps them this week. You had 2 easy games beating Wake Forest and NC State by a combined 104-10. On deck, you only have Louisville, which has fallen without Lamar Jackson as far as any team has fallen. And on the Florida State side, yes, we saw them competitive against Miami. But even though that game was close, they still only had 200 yards of offense. Florida State had 200 yards of offense. That's amazing to think of those numbers. I just can't step in front of Clemson right now. They're plus 256 yards per game. The defense is allowing 2.6 yards per carry and 52%. The offense is averaging 6.5 yards per carry, 67%. I just think right now there's better areas to find. It's either you back Clemson or you stay away from the game.
There you go. Great advice, Ralph Michaels, wagertalk.com. Do not forget, make sure you head over to wagertalk.com and get that 5% play code Miami2 when you get there. Just log on to wagertalk.com, either on the homepage there or on the Cal Sports page. You'll see it. Make sure that you get Ralph's pick. And Ralph, let's transition into the NFL tonight. Also here in Miami, it's like doom or gloom. It's a 4-3 team here, the Miami Dolphins, but Miami Dolphin fans are never satisfied. Brock Osweiler, kind of a revenge position, going up against his former team, the Houston Texans. Houston Texans 7.5 points right now. Can we trust the Houston Texans to be able to cover more than a touchdown?
Well, that's one of the 2 questions tonight. The other question is, can we trust Miami to keep it within 7.5 points tonight? So, it's what's the worst of two evils? Yes, Houston hasn't covered, but they've won. They've won 4 straight games. They started 0-3, wins against Indy, Dallas, Buffalo, and Jacksonville. And then again, until that Jacksonville game, there hasn't been anything impressive. And, the scary thing is, Houston's offense, which looked so good under Deshaun Watson before he got hurt at the beginning of last year, put up 216 yards against Buffalo, 272 yards against Jacksonville. And you look at Osweiler. Osweiler right now has completed 69%, with a 6-2 ratio. Obviously now this is his 3rd game under his belt. Had the 3-2 ratio against Chicago. Had a nice 2-0 ratio last week. I think it's a game where the Houston defense is getting better. And I think Houston has learned that to be competitive with an offense that has struggled at times, they need to be conservative on offense. Let Lamar Miller run that ball. They're averaging 29 carries per game for 114 yards. I think Miami gives it to Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake some more. Doesn't put Osweiler in bad situations against the Texas team. They certainly want him to be embarrassed about. I actually lean with under the total in this game tonight.
I kind of like that, too. And another thing, Ralph, that nobody seems to be talking about is just how healthy J.J. Watt seems to have gotten and how good this defense has been over the last couple of weeks. It was a rough start to the season, but certainly the amount of takeovers, and I think they've only allowed 3 touchdowns in the air over the last 3 weeks, too. A lot of people, they're so focused on the offense or the lack of offense for the Houston Texans, but quietly that defense has become one of the best in the NFL.
If you look at their yards, you were going to be impressed the last 3 weeks. 292, 229, and 259. Now, granted, that was against a struggling Dallas offense, Buffalo, which has no offense, and Jacksonville, which is, I don't know what the heck's happened to them. But what's impressed me even more is in 3 games, they've allowed 14 first downs, 12 first downs, and 15 first downs. I don't know how many years we have to go back and how many times it's occurred in a 3-game stretch. You've only allowed 41 first downs. That has impressed me the most about the Houston Texans.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game tonight for sure. Ralph Michaels joining us, WagerTalk.com. Ralph, a few minutes ago, you had mentioned you just can't get in front of that Clemson train, man, that just seems to be running people over. Well, I guess you can say the same thing about the Kansas City Chiefs, can't we? 6-1, but they've covered even in the loss. They're 7-0 against the spread. Is there any way to slow down this Kansas City Chiefs train?
Well, there's quite a bit of difference between Kansas City and Clemson, and that being a defense. Kansas City has the worst defense in all of football, and to be a 7-0 ATS mark and a 6-1 mark, that is quite shocking. But to be honest with you, you look at Kansas City, and they are starting to remind me of the New England Patriots. People don't give Andy Reid enough credit, but since 2015, he started 1-5 straight up against the spread. He is 29-14 against the spread. That's over 70%. I may be a number off on that record. I don't have it in front of me, but he's 70% against the spread since that time. And the Patriots last year, what did they do? They had a horrible defense. They gave up a lot of yards between the 20s, but didn't give up a lot of points. So this KC team is really reminding me of that. It is a situation where, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you, fool me 3, 4, and 5 times, then I'm just stupid. So I think you can't play against Kansas City no matter what the situation. And another thing that surprises me about this game, you remember they played Denver just 4 games ago. That game was 3.5. So if you were at Denver laying 3.5, you flip the home field, which means you should be laying 9.5. This line should actually be higher. You won at Denver. You had a 446 to 385 yard edge. You're at home. You've covered every game. Denver's talking about firing their head coach and how bad their team is. They're 2-11 ATS their last 13 road games, and those only 2 covers came against Indy without luck last year, and again, the worst offense in maybe the history of the NFL with the Arizona Cardinals. So it's very surprising this line is this small, because if you just flip the home field, it should be that way. But one team, you have all the momentum and the public money. The other team, you don't have any. There's enough sharps in this game continuing to fire to play against Kansas City because they're due to regress with how bad their defense is. I'm just not going to be the one that does that.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, Rob, there were a lot of people holding those tickets for the Denver Broncos that last game, too, and all of a sudden the second half happened, and that was the end of that. So it'll be very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing this game. And one of the other stats that, and this is one of the great things about following Ralph Michaels on Twitter, guys, at Cal Sports LV, that you've got to get there because you get nuggets like this. He threw this out last night, Ralph, and I was just blown away. Talk to us about the Tampa Bay Bucs and coming off an overtime victory and what you posted there last night, because this was mind-blowing to me.
Well, you know, if you go to wagertalk.com and you look on the top toolbar, there's an NFL query that pops up that has hundreds of possible scenarios that you could play with and see what teams do after a 20-point win or what teams do losing outright as a big underdog. Well, simply, I was playing around in the query, and you know, I was looking first at the Browns. I mean, again, I used the word historic a few times in this segment, but they have had 4 overtime games in 7 games. I'm sure there's no NFL team that has ever done that. You go back and look, I mean, we've never had overtime games like we've had the past couple of years with the extra points getting moved back. So, you know, I started looking at that situation, didn't find anything, but then I looked at the flip side. And Tampa Bay had won in overtime, and now they're an away dog. Well, teams in that role, like Tampa Bay, who won a game in overtime and are a dog in their next game, 2-16 against the spread. And while team angles are great, they're team-specific. When you have a league-wide angle or system like that, I give much more weight and credence to it because it doesn't matter what the team was. It just matters what the situation was. So, again, a lot more credence to a 2-16 league-wide angle than a team angle.
Yeah, it's just some great stuff. You guys got to log on not only to wagertalk.com, but make sure, do yourself a favor and follow Ralph on Twitter at Cal Sports LV. And one of the other games, Ralph, that we seem to always people have been talking about since the line popped up was Aaron Rodgers on the road taking on the Rams. And here we go. We're looking at Aaron Rodgers in a very unfamiliar situation, almost a double-digit underdog against this Rams team. Can Aaron Rodgers, coming off a bye, keep it close enough, if not even possibly pull out a victory on the road against the Rams?
Well, he's only been this big of a dog, I think, once in the last 10 years. And Aaron Rodgers is 4-0 against the spread when getting 6 points or more. So in Aaron Rodgers' entire career, he has only gotten 6 points or more 4 times and covered all those. The Rams are also 9-2-1 against the spread coming off a bye. While the Rams are clearly the best team in the NFL with the #1 offense and #3 defense, one surprising stat to me is this. They are plus 118 yards per game. That's pretty good. I mean, you're outgaining every opponent you play by 100 yards. Well, Baltimore is #2 at plus 103 yards per game. Green Bay is #3 in the league at plus 90-some yards per game. So right there, I mean, it shows you how close these teams really are. Now, you have to take a little bit of Green Bay's yardage away because it's come from when you're behind and you're trailing. But a lot of those games where they were trailing, they were still playing to win. There's a difference between garbage yards. Garbage yards are those that you're up 44-0 and the other team pulls all their defense, and all of a sudden you score 300 yards in the second half against their second and third string. While Aaron Rodgers has played from behind, they're not garbage yards because he got his team close. The opposition had their first-string defense on. No one was going to put their second and third string in against Aaron Rodgers, and he made all those losses closer, or he came back tied or won those games. So, again, they are coming from behind, but they are not garbage yards. So being 1-3 in yards per game diff on the season shows you how close this game is. And then again, you put the Rodgers effect into it. And I just think that, the LA Rams, you are off one of the worst situations you possibly can be. You went to Seattle. You had to come from behind, or you had a 2-point game win. You went to Denver. You came from behind. You played in altitude. You had a division road game. You're off 3 straight road games. You beat your division foe, yes. And now you have Green Bay, an important game. But more importantly, you probably have the second best team in the NFC on deck. You have to go visit the New Orleans Saints. So I don't know how many times out of 10 you would say Green Bay could be a letdown game with Aaron Rodgers, but because of the Rams' schedule, it's probably the least important game for them in that 5-week stretch. So I'm on the Packers with the points and Aaron Rodgers.
I got one final game before we let you go. Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com. And if you didn't hear what he's got going on, stick around, because we've got an opportunity for you to get one of his world-famous 5% plays here in college football that you don't want to miss at a price that is just unheard of. So we'll tell you that in a second. But I got a lot of Buffalo Bills fans who watch and follow us here, Ralph. And last week was disheartening, to say the least. But there are still a lot of Bills Mafia that believe in this defense and think there's just too many points being laid against Tom Brady here. What do you think Monday night? Is it just a foregone conclusion that they're going to win by double digits regardless, or can Buffalo actually keep this close?
Well, just saying this first. Since 1989, double-digit road favorites in the NFL are 61, 82, and 5. 43%. So right there, it does have you leaning with the Bills. That number is actually even worse when you have a division road favorite like they are. Now, Buffalo's defense is actually number 2 in the NFL when you talk about yards per game under a team's average. To me, yards per game are very important. But if you're playing a very weak schedule, obviously the yards per game are not going to be the same as if you're playing a top 5 toughest schedule. But the one thing that is consistent is you look at how you play against the schedule that you're forced to play, and how many yards that team scores above their average or below their average. So Buffalo has done very well. Again, number 2 in the league, holding teams below their average. That's an important factor for me. And again, this is basically your Super Bowl. The Bills have had a brutal schedule. You have played in your last 5 games at Minnesota, at Green Bay, at Houston, at Indianapolis, and you had the 1 game home against Tennessee. Oh, yeah, and by the way, your other home game was against the Chargers, one of the best teams in the AFC. If they're going to do anything, this is the game where I do think they keep it close. And on the Brady side, the Brady team is just a little bit different. Now, I don't know if Gronk will be back. Obviously, that's an important factor. He missed last game, and it didn't hurt the New England offense at all. But when New England's on the road against a team like Chicago, I think they only had 381 yards, so it's not as good as their 38 yard per game. But in a second straight road game situation, only having the 21 first downs, again, it's not going to be one of my top plays, but if I had to pick a side, I certainly would back the Bills in this rare double-digit home dog role, especially in prime time.
You see that, Bills Mafia, Bills fans? He's saying there's a chance. There's always a damn chance. That's why they play the game. Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com. And if you're just joining us, once again, Ralph is giving you the opportunity for, just as a way to say thank you for hanging out with us here on Thursdays when he comes on the show. He's giving you an opportunity at one of his 5% plays in college football. The numbers are staggering how well he has been doing this year in college football. And Ralph, all they do is go to wagertalk.com or to the Cal Sports page on wagertalk.com. They'll see that 5%. And you said it's normally $30, correct?
It is $30. Right now, people are paying $30 for that same play.
Yep, there you go. So all you have to do is cash out, put the code in Miami2. That's Miami2, and that brings it down to $2, Ralph. Am I understanding this correctly?
That is. And again, while you're at that homepage, check out all the free information you got. If you're a college football fan, there's a free newsletter each week called the Gridiron Guide. My college football stat compare is up there. I have my exclusive offensive, defense, and special teams rankings for each game. Oh, yeah, and by the way, last night, my 70-page college basketball preview. Starters for each team, 3-year stats for each team, rankings from 3 different sources, find out where each of the 55 new college basketball coaches came from, and in less than 2 weeks, Tuesday, November the 6th, there's 143 college basketball games tipping off.
It's going to be a lot. It's a good time of year, and it's a great time for you to head over to wagertalk.com. Take advantage of it. Code Miami2. Get that $30 5% play for just $2. And we always say it here, Ralph, knowledge is power, and there is no more knowledge at your fingertips than when you go to wagertalk.com. Make sure you follow Ralph at CalSportsLV on Twitter. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. Enjoy the games tonight. We'll talk again next week, Ralph. Thanks so much, man.
Always a pleasure, Joe. Thanks. Talk to you next Thursday.